Hey, everybody, and welcome to Tea Talk Thursday. My name is Tamika. I'm the mouth of IG at Tamika Talks and the thought leader at Life and Pumps, where I bring to you things wellness, lifestyle, health and wellness. I said that already, right? Health and wellness, lifestyle, entertainment, and travel. Today, I am so excited about my panel and my guests because I have four educators who are going to join us and really give us some information on what's going on. We're all seeing all the posts everywhere. Some people are in favor, some people aren't. I want us to talk about it, talk about just what is needed, what parents can do, like help ease some minds. I'm gonna have you guys introduce yourselves in 1 minute. Our last panelist just joined. Let me bring her in. All right, Elaine, wonderful. So Jacoby, if you want to start as the gentleman, you can introduce yourself. Thank you.
Well, normally it's ladies first.
I know, but it's a lot of us, so I'm going to give preference to you. Look at that.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. My name is Jacoby Simmons. I am currently a video production and a graphic design teacher in Delaware in high school, but I've been an educator for 21 years, and I've taught everything from 4th grade to 12th grade. So that's my experience.
Wonderful. 30 Mommy, you're up.
My name is Cherie. I am a teacher right now. I'm an educator, special ed middle school in Brooklyn, New York. I've been teaching for the past public school for 14 years now, with a break where I homeschooled my children.
Wonderful. Elaine, you might as well go to the next in round robin.
Sure. My name is Elaine Johnson. I am a 3rd grade teacher in a suburban school district. And I've been teaching 3rd grade for the past 20 years, but now I have elementary school children. And so my thoughts have changed a little bit about education, especially with what's going on now as a teacher and as a parent.
Oh, wonderful. I can't wait to hear that. All right, Dr. Bradley, you're up.
Hey everyone, I'm Letitia Bradley. I am currently a Director of Leadership and Support Services for Santa Barbara County Education Office, former counselor, teacher, principal with over 20 years of experience, and proud former principal of Compton High and a school called Almeria in Fontana.
Wonderful. Thank you. So everybody, this is literally going to be an organic conversation. I anticipate we will have comments. Don't worry about the comments. I will read them and post them, and you guys can answer them as best you can. I don't want anybody to get fired. So if it's something that you shouldn't be responding to, don't say it, because I cannot pay anybody's bills. But before we get started, it would not be proper if I did not say to all the parents out there watching, I want to remind you that while we are talking about back to school, right now you should be mindful that you should be scheduling appointments with your pediatrician to get your children up on their shots in the event that you do return to school. The HPV vaccination is something that I've been really doing a lot of reading about and talking about. As a breast cancer survivor, of course, my children had the injections. We did too. Definitely read about it. Talk to your pediatrician. Get the information, because there are other viruses that we know about, and the HPV vaccination is something that can really help your children in the long run. I do have a post about it. I'll make sure that I link to it so you guys can get the information. But if you have questions about HPV while we're on this chat here, drop them and I will give you the best responses that I can. All right, so let's get started. Talk to me, guys. Everywhere you see, all these districts are having all of these Zoom calls, since now we can't meet in person, about what they're going to do in terms of returning the kids to schools. How are you feeling? Is your district saying that they're going to open? Anybody?
Well, right now, and I won't say my district.
It's okay.
But it's a suburban, affluent district. And so there's just been a lot of unrest because we don't know anything yet. I just received a parent survey this morning. And so that's kind of unsettling that they're, the question has just come out today. What do parents want? What do parents need? It's July.
Wow. Yeah. And how about it's July? It's technically August. Like, we tapping on August's door. Yeah. And school should be starting in a few weeks. Yeah, absolutely. That is a little unsettling. All right.
Well,
anybody else?
In New York, we still are there's no answers. I think there was just a union town hall meeting yesterday, just speaking about what they would offer teachers and educators and staff, like additional PPE. I've taken several parent surveys for my own children. I have two boys in private school and one in public school. So it's just kind of like uneasy and unsettling, like not knowing what's going on as far as a teacher's schedule and even as a parent to a public school child. Like, I don't know how that's going to work. I don't see it working out. But from what I see, it's saying we're having the option that either you are medically able to be, I guess, just a leave medically, or you would be have to come in. So those are kind of your two options, or you take a leave of absence. So
what does a medical leave look like? Like, does my doctor have to say I have coronavirus?
You have to have underlying conditions, and it has to be medically documented and explained for you to be, So that's like, that seems not okay.
So the people that are asymptomatic who end up getting this, what about them? Okay, got it. Okay, all right. Okay, Jacoby, what's your district saying?
I was just like, ours is just still trying to figure it out. And since the governor hasn't really issued a complete order, they're trying to make some decisions about extending time for teachers and the school district to be prepared. Because like you said, we're in August and they still don't have any information as far as really what they're going to do. But our district has given the three options that every district has been given out to parents and talking about what the possibilities are. And I think that's the problem with just the issue with having the coronavirus out there, is that it's new. People are learning different stuff every day. So sometimes that's causing people confusion about what they learned in the very beginning to what they learn now. And so it has to be some level of patience and relaxation, because school districts are going to change as a school. Because think about it, if a teacher gets the coronavirus, now you got to do contact tracing. So I appreciate the leveled thoughts about we're having about how do we take our time to make those decisions. Because if they make a decision in June and then it changes in July and it changes in August, I think teachers or parents will be more aggravated if they go through trying to make a rush decision and then it changes a lot.
Right.
True. So Dr. Bradley, you are in like a unique situation because you're probably at the table where they're making some of these decisions. Now, don't get fired because I told you I can't pay no bills. So let us know what we can know.
So it's interesting. So in California, our governor actually took the decision out of the hands of most of the districts. So at first, the districts were struggling. They were going back and forth trying to figure out what they wanted to do. On one hand, you had unions who were saying, listen, right, understandably so, our teachers are concerned. And then on the other hand, you had parents on both sides of the table. So you had some who were like, listen, I want my kid back tomorrow. And others who were like, no way, they're not coming back until you fix this situation. Wow. So the governor just recently put out an order and said, listen, if you're one of the 30, maybe 31 counties now that's on a watch list, you cannot open until you're off the watch list for 14 days. So they took the decision out of most of our hands, and that included the public and private schools. So right now, that's 80% of California. So for the most part, we are planning to go 100% virtual. And then they obviously, if they get off the watch list for 14 days, then they have an option of reopening. But you can imagine that many districts, if they start closed, it will be really hard to go back and forth. And there's a lot of unanswered questions, like what happens if you go back off the list, and what happens when you come back, how many days can you stay off of before you have to close? And so it's a lot of unanswered questions.
Yeah. There's so many variables.
It is. And I think that's definitely what's adding to the unrest, because every other day it changes. Like the one day I looked and it was like, oh yeah, there's going to be 2 days in school, 1 day out, and then the next day will go the next 2 days. And I'm like, how's that work? And then I looked again and it was like, okay, everybody's staying home. And then it was, okay, we're going to go half days. So I get it. Everybody is trying to figure it out. And I agree with you, Jacoby, that it would have definitely been probably more nerve-wracking had they, tried to say, we're going to do this and then had to change it. The problem is parents have to plan, and I get it. The virus is so new. People don't know enough information about it. And at a time when we should have really been studying it and learning it, we weren't. So now we're playing catch up. Whereas the rest of the world is kind of like figured it out and doing some things. And right now what's happening is our kids are going to be the ones to suffer. So my children definitely, my children in my area, we attend a private school. I definitely felt like the education that my son received virtually was a lot. Like they were literally in class from 9:30 to 2:30. They did breakout rooms. The teacher grouped them according to whatever the project is. She would go in the room and pop in on them, and I guess it's high school, so it was kind of a lot of it was independent, but she was still there. Like they didn't know whether or not she was in the room or not, so she was still kind of a watch eye. And I imagine that she was probably also trying to homeschool her own kids, and along the way. Whereas my daughter's school was very hands off. Like I would go in her room, it'd be 10 o'clock, and she'd sleep. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, why are you sleeping? She's like, well, I checked in, I did all my work, I don't have anything else to do. So then it got me thinking, I've been paying all this money and you done by 10 o'clock. Wait a minute. So it just added a whole new level of like, wait. Now I need to examine this education. So look, we already got a question. Let me let his question come in. So Cy Bryant, hello Cy, wants to know, does virtual learning work? And do children have to be in school to learn? That's actually a good question. What do you guys think?
I don't think, for me, I did the 4 months virtual learning, but my students are actually special ed. They actually have autism. So they're nonverbal, verbal. So there's not much that we could have done online. I think a lot of it has to be done in person. So it's kind of like, I show you, you do it type thing. And the levels that they're on are just basically like pre-K, pre-readers, things like that. So I don't feel like it worked for that. And as far as my kids, like I said, one is private school. He was in class from 9 to 3, and he had 10-minute breaks. So they were getting, like different rooms. They had, but they tried to make it, I guess, interactive, where they did like read alouds and things like that, and games and game nights and movement breaks and bingo. Like they were so involved and active. I feel like it worked for him.
How old?
He's 8.
Oh, okay.
He's 8, and he's in third grade.
Okay.
I'm gonna need you to know what grade your kids are in.
I know, I should write it down. So he just finished, and I feel like for him, he learned a lot. He was actually able to do a lot of independent work, where he's like, he gets really distracted very easily. But I feel like that worked for him. Whereas my 10-year-old, my 5th grader, his school is kind of like, we have a couple Zoom meetings here and there, and he was expected to do his work, but when I got his report card, he did amazing. So I feel like it worked, and it depends on the population that you're dealing with. My kindergartner, not so much. He had a Zoom meeting 1 hour every other day, which he would walk out of like in 15 minutes. He's like, oh, I'm done. No, you're not.
Why did I see you?
And what you bring up is such a great point. It's so much variability, right? And so not only do you have to attend to the population that you're dealing with, you also have to make sure that the people who are doing the teaching have the support and the confidence and the skill to be able to deliver it. So my struggle is that there's inequity. So you may have one teacher, if they had strong skills and during the regular situation, they probably are going to quickly adapt and have strong skills in this situation. If they struggle with connecting with their kids in person, they darn sure aren't going to be able to connect with their kids virtually. So how do we find ways to prevent these inequities from getting even further and broader in this situation? I feel like it's like a fishbowl, if you will. So things that are already happening get magnified in this situation, and there's no real way to tell because the administrator is not going to be able to pop in every single one.
Exactly.
Half the time, it's just how much support can you provide. So it's a struggle. I think it can work given all those things you're talking about and all those variables.
But then I think even in New York, like 2 months in, we're still talking about students who didn't have devices. They didn't have Wi-Fi. They didn't have, and they were supposed to be provided. Like, how can you support virtual learners if they can't even get online?
Right. That is key right now, especially in Philadelphia, because a lot of students don't have access to Wi-Fi. Like there were so many reports where they were talking about, so Comcast pretty much owns the market share for the internet in the city of Philadelphia, and they have programs for low income. But what happens is if my mom had Wi-Fi or had cable and didn't pay the bill, they're not then going to allow me to sign up just because I need it for school. So there's so many variables that are going into play behind that. Go ahead, Jacoby. You look like you had something to say.
Yeah, well, I said, the thing is people haven't shifted into what education is. And so we still doing things traditionally. Now, there's two problems with how we look at this, right? So we haven't dealt with the true shifting of our society into the digital age in academics. And so now that we've been forced to do that, people are frustrated, teachers and students, because we haven't looked at that part of education, period. So as most of us, even people who are at work, are really working digitally in the first place. We don't need face-to-face meetings, but people are used to face-to-face meetings. Students don't need to be home, but they need to have self-discipline. And that's where we fall short, because people are making a lot of excuses about, I'm this type of learner and I'm that type of learner and all these other things. I do understand what helps you best, but most of us have learned, especially professionals, no matter what it is, self-discipline, learning how to stay still and focus for a certain amount of time is what really indicates our success level. And because a lot of our kids, the ones that we're talking about, don't have that grit or that ability to sit still and focus, or aren't forced to have to make that decision, then they suffer. When people are saying, well, we're not talking about special needs kids. We know we have some exceptions, but now that students are going to be forced to focus in one place, that's where we're going to have a lot of those problems. That's where, students don't know how to sit still.
I think
and that's a training. That's not, I want to be clear that the focus sitting still is a training. It's a habit that needs to be practiced, and we haven't forced them to make that adjustment. So now you're going to see it manifest at home, where parents don't normally see that discipline or that lack of self-discipline manifest because they're not in the classroom. So those are going to be a lot of those issues that you're going to deal with. Teachers and students haven't made that adjustment. And so the conversations we're really having now about hybrid instruction, flipped classrooms and all this stuff is old, and it was started way back in the 2000s. It's just that people use finances, which only happen if you're talking about, they're looking at it, finances only happen when you're talking about schools in cities or urban environments or rural environments that are suffering, because all private schools and schools that are well financed are making this adjustment. And it's also, they have to look at, are the parents focused on really, really supporting their kids in this adjustment instead of worrying about what about me? Because that's where you're going to see. Because I'm going to tell you this, it doesn't matter what we do. The kids who have parental involvement are going to be successful, rich, poor, black, white, or otherwise. And that's the point where we got to really focus on how do we keep those engaged and focused and keep those parents working.
Okay, Elaine, go ahead. You look like you had something to say.
I was just going to say, I think kids can work and learn virtually. I think access is very important, but also effort. And so the effort on the teacher's part and the effort on the student's part is really important, because I started in March, and I consider myself technologically savvy, but I was thrown for a loop with everything. And so fortunately, I had a good team, and I'm working summer school now, and I've learned more and more that I can't wait to share with my team. We're movement breaks. You're right, Kobe, that kids need to learn how to focus, but they also need to move just to get the brain flowing. They need to be able to move. And so as an educator and as a teacher, I make sure I provide breaks. We start our song with we start our day with the song, we're getting up and moving, and then there are increments throughout that we are moving around so that the kids know it's okay to have energy, but then at a certain time you have to sit down. And so I think it's going to be very important as educators to really set the tone. If we're going virtually, these are the expectations, this is what we're going to do. And I've only learned that through teaching summer school these last couple of weeks. Towards the end of virtual learning, I picked up some things, but I think teachers are going to have a shift, again, who aren't already trained with the technology, but also learning how to establish a relationship through the computer. Looking at someone, looking at the computer, making sure that you're making eye contact with those certain students who need it. So I learned that a little bit, putting a little something in the chat like, hey, Kobe, it looks like you're a little sleepy. Did you eat this morning? Just personally sending a chat to that particular student, emailing parents, really trying to make sure that engagement is on, has been challenging. But, things, again, teaching summer school, I've learned more that I can share during the school year once school starts up again.
That's great. That's a really good point. And I want to get back to how you said the shift. And, we know that the shift in teaching to the student is a problem face-to-face. So we have a lot of educators who aren't ready to think outside the box. And ultimately, that is going to affect how well these students are successful. And Kobe, you are correct that parental involvement means the world and definitely will lead to the students being successful. But what happens when you have that teacher who, like I said, is not teaching not only to the student, but is not prepared to go outside the box. Like what are parents' options at that point?
Well,
that's the initial struggle. Well, we've been talking about that for years.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
And so it's finding those teachers, it's putting things in place, but it's also finding the proper training. Like sometimes when you talk about the things like my union is good, I love my union, and they fight for you. Now, because I've been in other school districts where the union wasn't that great, but there's also things where the union can inhibit things because you got teachers who've been there 30 years, 40 years, some 25, and they learn from the old teachers who are cantankerous. I've heard a teacher say, well, it doesn't work for math, and if they make me do it, I'm quitting. And so, sometimes you quietly pray
that they retire
for what things need to happen, because they're being so entrenched in an environment sometimes prevents them from being able to open up their mind. And a lot of times too, they just sitting there like, I only got 2 or 3 more years to ride this out.
Yeah.
So how do I make this happen? And the other thing is, it starts from the head. If the district leaders, the leaders at the district office and then building level aren't proficient or aren't trained to be proficient, and you don't set up a proper professional development model, which I like my district again, then you won't have that success. A lot of times we know as teachers, they throw stuff at us and say, you got 5-hour training, now go implement it in the classroom, right?
Tomorrow.
And then you got 4 teachers that's going to do whatever you tell them to do. You got the other 5 that's going to try it and then say it didn't work, and then don't do it ever again. And then you got the other 2 or 3 old ones that are never going to do it. And then nobody's going to follow up. Instead of teaching us or teachers like they teach the children, give it to us, let us practice, then come back and say, what problems, how do we fix it? And so there's like a whole litany of things that have to happen, and they're asking us to fix, or districts to make a decision and fix everything in 6 months.
Right.
And it's going to be difficult because it's mindset. You got some people now that's been off that don't want to come back in the building.
A whole lot of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's without all the information, they're afraid. So now, as we put this thing together, you have to envision, what does success in the workplace look like? And how does that affect my child and how that works? And people aren't looking at that. They're always going back to when I was in school, we did. So I got 3 questions I'm going to ask people. And then so 1, why do bells ring in the school every day?
To remind you where you need to be.
Okay. So now watch, when I go back and explain this, when we start reevaluating shifts in education.
It's like Pavlov's bell. It gets us trained.
Okay.
Lunchtime, recess.
Okay, so watch when I bring this back. So secondly, why are desks the size they are?
Why what?
Why are desks the size they are?
Yep. Why are desks? All desks, school desks, are exactly the same size, unless they got like a little bit of a adjustment in the shape.
But what about those desks you slide in with the arm thing?
They're the same size as the other desks. When you look at the area you cover, they're all. When you look at the area they're in.
I don't know.
So the third thing is, why are kids grouped by age?
You mean other than the fact that back in the day there was this whole industrialization thing where they wanted to make you like factory modeled products so they could get you out, and then after a certain age they wouldn't even educate you no more? You talking about that?
Yeah. So when we go back, is because it was conditioning students to respond to the bell like they did in factory. Right. Number 2, the desk size is normally the size you would stand in, or space you would be able to share when you were in a factory. Lastly, like she said, that was the only way to simplify the progression of children, is by age, because that's the only common denominator when you talk about children. So now when we start looking at, so that fit when we were going through the industrial age, that fit a little bit when we're making that transition from the industrial age. Now we're in the digital age. Everybody works completely different, and the thought process is different. And then we sit down, we send emails. Students don't understand the proper etiquette in that communication. How do we sit down? Kids do more writing than we did, but people don't accept that because they want them to write cursive.
Right.
But now with texting and all those other things, kids communicate a lot more by writing than we ever did. So it's more important to teach them how to communicate more effectively. But since we're still focused on all these, like, I argue with teachers all the time about cursing, right? When's the last time you really wrote a cursive letter?
You have to know how to sign your name.
But see, that's an old.
I hear what you're saying about signing your name, but my signature, which is registered by the federal government, by the way, is literally my initials. And it looks like Scribble Scrabble.
And so once you transition to all of those things to rethink how we effectively communicate, that's how you, or effectively survive in our environment now, that's how you help your children. You know, how do I express my feelings? The discipline. I know I'm probably a bad teacher sometimes, but with my kids, even though they go to camp until 5 o'clock, and I make them do handwriting, I'm letting them learn cursive, but part of it is teaching them that discipline. You got to sit still, because I guarantee you, how many kids didn't sit still this whole break for any amount of time? So guess what's going to happen? As soon as you go into the building, you're going to get your kid suspended, written up, and everything else, because he ain't going to know, he's not going to be able to move from one environment to the other. The other thing that we talk about, and I don't want to dominate the conversation, so I'm going to shut up in about 3 sentences, is we have to really sit down and understand that when we talk about schools, that hand-holding kids through a transition, especially the ones that we're concerned about from lower class to middle class, is going to be very important, because all schools operate in the middle class environment, and most of our children that we're talking about and we're concerned about don't. So understanding how the social cues and social norms are when they go into the building is what's going to be extremely important, because it's going to teach them how to operate in that environment. And it also helps them with code switching and knowing how to operate in both environments, which some of us do naturally just because we had to, but some of us suffer, especially in the elementary and primary grades, and then they're already ticked off, marked off, or lost interest in school just because they couldn't make that transition earlier than some. Because most of the time in school, they're not looking for kids who are quote unquote good kids. They're looking for compliant kids. Absolutely. And that's a whole different thing. And how do we need to address that? So sorry, that's my long speech, but go ahead.
It's totally fine. It's totally fine. Yes, you dropped some tidbits, of course. I totally agree with the whole, the bell ringing and all that. I did not know that about the desk. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm gonna have to go measure some desks and make sure that's the truth, Kobe. But you're right. I mean, you're right. I mean, literally, and I think that is part of the reason why. And I don't even want to say just our kids. I feel like just children in general often suffer because, that industrialized thought is about being in the box. And at very young ages, teachers want to break kids and make them stay in that box. And I can speak from experience. My son was in elementary school. He went to a Montessori school, and basically a Montessori school, it's everybody should be kind of doing their own thing. That's not what they wanted. They wanted you to be in the box and to do what the box said. That doesn't work for him. So when he left, he went to public school. He got one teacher that was amazing. She was good for him in the beginning. We moved on to the next year, and then we got a teacher who wanted him to be in the box. No, this is how we do this. This is how you read this. This is how you do that. And I don't parent that way at home. Yeah. Our children are different. I know my son and my daughter are two totally different beings, and that's how I parent them. When I taught them to read, that's how I taught them to read, because she learned a lot differently than he did. And what happens is we have educators who don't recognize the importance of going to the student and seeing what they need. So as long as we have that, there's not really going to be any way to break that system. So are you saying, I guess we can start with not having a bell, but I don't know how realistic that is.
I know. Well, kids do need routine. Like that helps to stabilize, and that helps. The structure of a day is really important, because for some kids, that routine is part of what helps keep them together. So I think, certain types of methods, it could be a bell, anything, but kids need to know that this is going to happen at this time, at this part of the day. But what helps to, I think, create relationships is that they know at a certain point during the day, you can get crazy, you can get up, you can dance, you can do this, but then there's a time when we come back together and it's time to listen. And so I agree that there are so many teachers who are regimented and structured, and that this is the way they do things. You open up this book, you turn to this page, that they've lost sight of building connections with your students, because then they learn. Like if you can't connect with your teacher, you're going to shut down. Mm-hmm. And so I think that as teachers, we have to continue to provide those structures and routines. Like even when we started remotely, I still started my day every morning with Bill Withers' A Lovely Day. They knew as soon as the Zoom bell hit, we were here on a lovely day, and so that structure really helped them to know. And at the end of the day, we're going to hear somewhere over the rainbow. That helps children. I do think that we're going to have to rethink, though, how state testing, we have to rethink like what is really important. And for kids, my daughter was in kindergarten also, but 2032, like the job that she's going to have 20 years from now, like how are teachers creating projects and creating environments that prepare for 20 years from now. It's a hard job as an educator, but I do think that, the good and the bad of all of this is that we're thrown into this, this big ocean. We have to figure it out. And I think that there's a lot more resources and information sharing so that we can make sure our children are successful. But it's going to take a lot of hard work. And I think as educators, it's a labor of love anyway, when we go into this field. But I think there's a lot more information. I think that, there are going to be a lot of positive changes. I may be optimistic though. But.
And I think we're good though. With you. Yeah, I think we also need to be okay with different ways to demonstrate and show mastery, right? So if you think about it, I think that sometimes we do try to force kids into a box, and while routine is important, they also need to embrace the fact that some kids need to move, and that little movement is not going to hurt anybody, especially if they're still learning. So I think when you have this virtual environment, you have to be okay with Jerome standing up for a little bit and coming back. But is he able to demonstrate that he's picked up the concept?
That's a good idea. And you figure on Zoom, like they can stand up while they're at the computer. It's okay.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Kobe.
No, I was gonna say it's the part we talking about self-discipline. Even if they got to get up and move, that's fine. We all need that break during the day, but it's teaching them how to operate, come back and get it all together and get those things done and focus. And I seen the question you posted up there, and I was like, our district was like, kids are going through a traumatic time. Like you can't. Well, one thing I'm gonna go back, judging how teachers did it in the spring, it's not how it's gonna look in the fall. Yeah. Because everybody was stressed, everybody was traumatic. So if I gave my kids the same kind of work I gave them when they were in school without my support in this transition, they're gonna suffer. So a lot of times you give them review work to strengthen skills they've already had, or I gave them work that they can easily find the answers on their own and come back and communicate it. So some of the time it's going to be busy work, and by me teaching a special, I had to be considerate that at the end of the day, your reading and math is going to take precedence and how stressed they're going to be. Because like I had kids who would they probably slept during the day, but they would get up at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock in the evening and do their homework until 2 or 4 in the morning, because I'm in high school. So you start to think like kids started to reevaluate what time was best for them to work when you gave them that, which I thought was cool. Like as long as it was in by Monday at 8 o'clock, I have no problem. So
I think that's how my daughter's school operated, hence the reason she would sleep at 10:30, but that's okay. So we have another comment from Cy Bryan, of course. He's basically saying how he works virtually for 10 years and he cannot appreciate being in a physical building beyond social interactions. He is correct. Like, he would not do well. He's that kid that needs to be alone. It's okay though.
Sorry.
Go.
When we switched over, when we were thrown into virtual learning, remote learning, I think and on the educator side, for me, my boys, my own children were in school, and I pulled them out several times to homeschool them because of terrible teachers and their experiences, and I didn't want them to be jaded. So I kind of pulled them out and did that. But for me, in my house, we have hundreds of books where I'm always crafting. I'm always doing something. So for me, I feel like I shifted easily because I was able to create more, be more creative, because my school is kind of like, you got to do it this way. Like your autistic students need to read Shakespeare. No, they don't. They need to learn how to not hit other people, or, like how to express their feelings in a certain way. So I was able to transition and do a lot more hands-on projects with my students. Like I kind of showed it, took a video, and I really enjoyed that. But a lot of other teachers, like I guess in our group chats, they weren't prepared because some of them are like single people. They don't have children's books around. They don't have like pictures on there, like, and then they're thrown there and they're like sitting in their kitchen, like, what am I supposed to do? So,
but the other thing you have to realize also, 30 Mommy, is that you're creative. So that's why you were able to do some of those. I mean, no, realistically,
Yes.
that's why you were able to do some of those things. And then it does go back to the fact that you have 3 boys at home that you got to keep entertained.
Yeah, and then I have
you know,
experience at
you were
home.
doing
So
some
when I
stuff.
walked out that last day, I didn't have to take anything with me. I'm like, I'm good. That's some of the other teachers are struggling, like, and you see them online, like, oh my goodness, I don't have a physical book to read to my students. Like, you know, like they didn't have it. So I feel a lot of the time we actually collaborated a lot, and they did take a lot of my content, you know, and were like, can I just use that? I'm like, sure, whatever, you know. So it was rough, and I feel like
it sounds like teamwork is definitely what's needed. But we have a really good question from guess who, guys? Cy Bryant. So he said he feels like summer was wasted not teaching teachers how to teach virtually. PA Virtual School and others have taught online school for a number of years. Should organizations like that be leading the way in this new way of learning, including ongoing teacher education? I think that's a great question. So what do you guys feel about that? Like, do you feel like the virtual school should kind of stepped in and helped, you know, schools, in-person schools, navigate this journey? What do you think?
I would agree because they already have, you know, a model in place. I think there was a lot, there was like, you know, people already homeschool. So there was a big old shift as far as people looking up homeschool groups and how do homeschool parents do it. People are like, wait, this is not the same as homeschool. This is a pandemic. This is a trauma, you know, experience that we're having. But it would have been nice to have a little bit more, you know, feedback from people who have already been doing it. So I appreciated the homeschool moms, you know, giving suggestions, and, you know, from virtual teachers that I know who teach virtually, giving suggestions. But it would have been nice from, you know, again, the head down, giving us something, because I felt like we were kind of pulling at straws in the beginning, and then we all, as teachers do, figured it out, you know, and tried to make it work. But I had mentioned to Tomika, I actually have to go. I have to teach.
No, go for it. No, thank you for jumping on. I appreciate you.
Yeah, I wanted to pop that in. It was nice to meet you, fellow educators, and enjoy the conversation. Thank you.
Wonderful. Have a good one. I'll see you soon.
All right, bye.
I'd say I agree with her too as she goes away, because but we have to be careful, right? Because no one wants to reinvent the wheel, but no one's going to insert themselves uninvited. So while these organizations have the history of doing this, they're also businesses. So I think it's on the districts to say, let's reach out to the experts. Let's invite them to the table so that we know that we actually welcome their input. Because if you call me talking about, hey, I'm going to teach you how to do things, I'm going to go, that's nice. You know, and I'm wondering what you're trying to sell me. But there's nothing to say that you can't create committees and get experts at the table and have conversations like we're having now so that you can get those best practices.
Right. And I just have to wonder if part of the reason they didn't is money. You know, these districts. So let me tell you guys. So we had a vacant spot for our school district board here in my area, and I ran for the spot. A lot of people were like, you should run, you should run. I am not a politician. It is not what I do. I am loud and I do speak my opinion. And that's part of the reason why they were like, I should run. I did not win the spot, which is totally fine. But just in the process that I went through, I realized that it is about money. It is less about making certain that our kids are getting what they need. And I live in a great district. Like, my district is fine. You know, let me not say it's great. I live in an okay district. I feel like the kids are getting, for the most part, some of what they need. There's not a lot of equity. I don't see that. But I feel like it's okay. But throughout the conversations and me reading like past minutes and things, I realized it is a money game. And so that's what makes me wonder why they didn't reach out to these virtual schools, because you can't come to me asking me for free stuff. I tell people all the time, I don't work for free. I have to eat. Like, I can't pay the utility bill with an IOU from you. No, I need money. And so I have to wonder if the reason why these districts have not reached out to these schools that have been doing it and doing it for years, well, I mean, cranking out some really great, smart kids who are like skipping grades and doing all those type of things, is because they didn't want to pay for it.
Well,
possibly that, yeah.
I'm gonna say there's a few things. One, I don't think so. Being a teacher, that they should step in, because a lot of times they're not dealing with the same capacity. You know, like they may have a few hundred students, and when you're talking about like my school with maybe 1,500 students, like that's a completely different thing when you're a teacher and you got 30 students than if you got 15 or 10. How you deal with those kids and how you can interact and how much not transparency is the wrong word, but access to me.
Okay.
You know, like I teach 120 students. So during the week, I got maybe, we'll say, 180 parents that are going to text me possibly, or another 120 students that I have to communicate with. So it creates a different dynamic. And also, teachers, districts have their own specialists that are good at this stuff. A lot of times they don't have the time. And like I said, I must be blessed with, like, we've been going through summer training already. You know, like, we've got professional development, we got things that we need to do, we got already stuff put in place for us to learn. And they've incentivized us by some of the things. They made those hours countable for other stuff we need to do that we normally do later in the year. So, you know, like, depending on the district, a lot of times they have professionals that's their job to try to use educational technology. They also use this school specialists in my district so far, to use those to communicate, send stuff out. And on our staff meetings, our principals always asking. We got somebody giving suggestions. One of the teachers have been creating videos, tutorials on how to do certain stuff. Mm-hmm. So maybe districts a little bit ahead of the curve in how we operate as far as using technology. But we've been already working this summer on improving now that. So, and I'm assuming, like we're talking about, most of the districts who are affluent have already been moving in that way slowly. Especially like we're talking about private schools. That's why you see the difference in that instruction. But they also can afford to give the materials out and what they prioritize on what they're going to use. So it's already been in place. Like a lot of private schools I know have already been one-to-one devices, and the expectation that the students have already been online. So there's a lot more to it. And a lot of times the schools that have virtual schools they've already had compliance as far as what they need to be successful in that kind of environment. Now we're asking kids and parents who haven't asked for that environment to be prepared. Like we're talking about internet access. Our biggest thing is, first, let's get the kids have machines, then access. Those virtual students don't have to worry about that because most of those students have already made the agreement that parents have made the agreement that they're going to give those kids basic materials for them to be successful in that environment. So they don't have to worry about non-compliant. What if I don't have it? You know, in the public school, we're supposed to be in charge of any kid in our school. We got to educate them no matter what their deficiency is, right? Those virtual schools don't have that issue. You know, if I have an autistic kid, what is my job to educate them? Those virtual schools might not even accept that autistic kid. They don't have to. So it creates a whole.
So I don't know about not accepting them, because technically virtual school in Pennsylvania anyway is public, so you don't pay for it.
Not New York.
Yeah. Right. I was going to say. So I think it depends on where you are. It is public, and I do want to say that I think that what happens oftentimes is if they don't have access to support you, I think they tell you that. I'm certain, and I think that they try to connect you with something that does. But in PA, it is public school. Like the virtual charter school is public school. So, but we have another comment here. She says, when our kids have a teacher who is not fully engaged or prepared in teaching your kids during virtual distance learning in fall, it's helpful for the parents to be strong advocates for your children. Absolutely. And I think we should definitely touch on that because we're already at 12:45. It's not easy to navigate the system, but we need to find out who within the school will support in educating our kids. That you said a mouthful. So for me, throughout my entire process with running for the school board, that was one thing that was very important for me. When my kid did attend the public school, I remember calling the public school because I wanted to tour the school. Like my daughter was already going to go to a private school, and all the private schools I toured them. So for me, it was like, why can't I tour the school? And it was really, really a hard process for me to get in there and look at the school. So much so that I even told them when I spoke to the people at the school board, I said, I feel like y'all doing something y'all don't want people to see, because why can't I go inside? Like, what's happening? Like, what are you doing in there? And so from just being there and dealing with the few things that I did have to deal with while my son was there, I realized that there was no person that I felt was an ally that I could reach out to. And I get it. An ally should not necessarily just look like you, but you're just more comfortable with the person that looks like you because you feel like, okay, at the minimum, they're going to have my back. So let's talk about basically what she stated in her comment. Who do parents go to advocate for them? What should they be doing? Like, what are their rights concerning all of this? Anybody?
Well, parents have more rights than they choose to. A lot of them have negative opinions of the school or schools in general. So like them going to see or speak to the principal is like them going to the principal when they was in high school or elementary school. So they don't. I'm gonna say this: parents have all the leeway. Any parent to say, "Well, this school," man, listen. I don't know. Maybe I'm in a different district where because if a parent goes to the principal or to the superintendent or makes a complaint, they investigate immediately. You know what I mean? But you got to be a mouthpiece for your child. Some of them want to say, "I sent the email," and then don't follow up. Some don't want to academically argue, their point, because you can't go there. Because as soon as you don't seem like you know what you're talking about, or they seem like they can run circles around you, they will. And
but
so
that's not okay, though.
It's not, but it depends on the environment. If it's antagonistic or supportive, like my principal, and I love her to death. She talks to the parents. They're invited in. The hard part is just having the tour is hard because you're talking about school safety now. You don't have enough people to tour parents anytime they want to come in. So, but you can schedule tours. Well, it's hard because you talk about school safety and they don't want parents, like in certain schools. I'm in an urban suburban school. Like I said, I got people who live in the projects and people live in $250,000 homes. But I've had parents want to come in and deal with another person's child. You got to be careful when you let parents walk around the building with school safety now.
Or deal with you.
Yeah.
I've had that.
Well, I wear sneakers every day, so.
And as far as
Go ahead. I just want to touch a little bit more about the idea of parent advocacy. We also have to kind of be sympathetic to parents in that we're in the system. And so when you're in the system, it seems like very natural, right? Exactly. When you're outside of the system, you don't realize, to Jacoby's point, just how much power you have. And I think key in that is that schools should educate parents on what to do if they don't already advocate for themselves. And first things first, you want to know who supervises the teacher that your son or daughter or child is dealing with. And then first, always start with that teacher, because I never want to hear as an administrator that you didn't have a conversation with a teacher before you came and talked to me. Because it's kind of like, if you go over my head, you better handle it over my head, right? Like, come on now. So first, know who are the people that you could speak to. Some people jump straight to the school board when they don't realize the only thing that the school board, only person they're in charge of is the superintendent. Mm-hmm. So I feel like, 1, document your concerns with the teacher first. 2, talk with the supervisor, let them know that that's what you'll happen to do if you don't get a positive resolution. And then 3, make sure that you're reasonable about your expectations, because a lot of times I think we sometimes feel that the educators are supposed to do things that are beyond what they're even capable of doing. And parents are starting to realize just how hard it is now that they have their kids at home. And so, I don't know, but I feel like it's so important to know what is possible. And I feel like different communities, if they're more affluent, they can take advocacy automatically. They just do it. And then I feel like in other communities, we give so much reverence and respect to the teacher and the educator that we feel like they're the experts. So how dare I say something and talk to them?
Right, absolutely.
In our school, we have a parent coordinator, still not sure what they're supposed to do. But, that's the person who parents should be reaching out to parents, should be running, I think, just like maybe parent PDs, things like that. But it just makes sense, because in my other son's school, like with the private school, like I know who to go to if there's any questions. But dealing with the public school, when I had an issue with the teacher, I went to the teacher and I ended up just pulling them out. But like this person should be the liaison between the parents and the school. Yeah, and just kind of like an easy way for the parents to kind of contact who they need to contact. And there should be like a structure, like a hierarchy. Like, I need you, like, this is how, the steps that you would take. And a lot of people don't, a lot of parents don't know. So they just kind of like automatically go, well, I'm going to go to the principal, so.
Right. Yeah. So I feel like that could be a discussion that happens at the beginning of the year, like when you're giving out those packets, back to school night or something. Right. Let people know. And oftentimes people don't want to join like the PTA because they don't want to just sell cookies. They don't want to just do all of that. They want some action. And I think that is a huge mark that is missed oftentimes in the schools, because parents don't know who they should go to. But we do have another comment. So Diana, hello, Diana, how are you? She says, to Kobe's point, she agrees that education has always had an economic agenda. Yeah, absolutely. They prepare children for the workforce of that time. And so if society moves to a virtual model, virtual school would have to adjust. However, there's a socialization piece to education. She's absolutely correct. Yeah, and I think that that's what we're going to start seeing, as so many parents are basically demanding, and which I love to see, that people are like, I'm not returning to the school. And what I'm telling them is, it's fine that you don't return to the school, but you need to find out what your rights are, because you don't want them to not pass your student because you didn't go back to school. You missed however many days it is. But yes, we are at a place where things are changing, and we have to adjust. And we'll have to see what happens. And as she stated before, Dr. Bradley was stating how, every other day on Facebook you saw where parents were like, I quit. I don't want to do this. I'm sorry to the teachers. And I do feel like it has given so many people a new appreciation for teachers and how underpaid they are, because that's a lot of work. Let me see. So Colby, everything apparently you're saying, everybody is agreeing with. Look at you.
Oh, way to go.
So we do have a question. Tanya wants to know, how does virtual learning affect children with special needs?
I can't answer that question.
I think it definitely depends on the type of special need. Because like I said, my students were nonverbal middle schoolers who needed we're working on everyday skills, like everyday life skills, tying your shoes, like things like that. And but definitely the parents need to definitely be involved and focused. And so it just depends on like how much parent involvement, I think, and what the teacher is teaching. What the teacher is, what information they're trying to get across. And a lot of the times we saw that we were actually teaching the parents and siblings. So it's kind of, you're teaching them how to how to maybe interact properly or things like that with their special needs students. So it definitely depends on, the parent involvement, the family involvement, and the teacher.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think it's also important for parents to know what the accountability system is in their state or in their area. So, for example, in California, they are required to produce a report that shows how they are going to meet the needs of the special education students in the virtual environment. And it has to be open for public comment. It has to be open for scrutiny and for suggestion. And so you're right. It's kind of like it depends upon the needs of the students. And this idea, what you said, is so true about teaching the parents to be able to know how to help while at home. That's going to be the biggest thing ever, because they are the people. It used to be that your teacher was the one who saw your kid the most, right? And now that the kids are at home, they're going to see their parents a whole lot more than they ever probably anticipated. So giving them the skills is kind of like you're going to see more PDs with just the parents coming to learn how to do this new math and how to do these different things, so they can be of help instead of hindrance when they're trying to give their kids assistance at home.
I hope teachers know the new math is out the window. No parent is teaching their kid new math. If their kid doesn't already know, it's not happening.
Carry the one.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's not happening. They better get on Khan Academy and learn. So Penny Love has a comment. She's saying that not many of her daughter's teachers and administrators initially liked her. I can attest to that, because I had to go hard. However, after the rough first year, she found that many of the teachers, counselors, and principals go out of their way to work with her and even advocate for her child. I do believe that initially, and it's kind of unfortunate, especially when you're in kind of an affluent area, let's say that, that oftentimes you're judged based on what people see on TV. And so I remember going to the public school here and getting to the school and realizing I did not have my wedding ring on. I actually went back home to put it on. And I remember like being in there, and every time they said something to me, I would be like, yes, because my husband, he's at work. And I was like, and I left the school and I was like, I never talk about him this much. What is going on? And I think that oftentimes when they feel like, sometimes when you're a single parent, or, if you're looking a certain kind of way, they're like, whatever, she's not going to be vested. So, we got to overcome those hurdles, though they're not correct, and people should not be judged that way. But we have to admit that it's definitely what's happening. And so what I want to talk about also before we close, because we have about 5-6 more minutes left, is how do we help those students who, one, we already know that the big issue with this whole virtual learning just in itself are those kids who really rely on being in the school building because they need it, because they're homeless, they need food, they just need that support that the teacher provides that they're not getting at home. What can parents do? Like, maybe it's me, I see this in another kid. What can parents do to kind of help other kids? Like, I know there's been a lot of mention of these like education pods and things of that nature, but what other things can parents do to help one another? Because I feel like if we don't pull together as a village and make this work, our kids are going to fail.
Well, I know
I
for
think
me,
that's
like
the
my
only thing to do. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I actually, when my boys started a book club, Boys and Books, where we were kind of just meeting with other boys who weren't actually in their school, just kind of like in the area in the neighborhood, and I would reserve a free room in the library, and they would all read the same book, and they would come together and discuss. So kind of like that kind of educational pod thing, like kind of just pulling kids in to do certain things together in small groups. I feel like that would be a great way to start.
Okay.
So everything that you were saying was right. This is where the community has to understand, and parents have to understand their true importance. These are things that we forgot and left up to the school to rebuild our community. Now, this is going to be important because the school can't do everything, and the truest and basic part of education comes from the parents and also the people around them. So that is going to truly be important for our growth in affluent or poor neighborhoods. The community is going to have to really come together and figure this one out. And that's what people, I think, are trying to ask questions around. Like, people are saying, what does the school do this? What does the school do that? But they got to realize it's different. And you're going to have to be more involved, and you're more valuable than you allow yourself to be. And you have to understand, this is the thing where it's like, I'm a teacher. I'm like Charles Barkley in a sense. I'm not supposed to be the main role model. I'm supposed to educate you and move you forward. Parents are supposed to be the ones at home. And the sad part is there's going to be a lot of kids who aren't going to get it because they don't have that kind of support.
Right.
And we're going to have to find some ways to get those kids, like you said, that are foster homes or in homes where they don't have the right support or are homeless. Because you don't realize Philadelphia has close to 3,000 or 4,000 homeless high school kids. And I mean, you can't ask the school to do but so much.
Right. Yeah. I was really amazed when we first went under lock, I was really nervous about like, where are the homeless people? And I'd been like talking to a lot of social workers. So when I got those numbers of the kids that are actually homeless and really depend on school for warmth, a meal, just somebody they can talk to, I mean, my heart was really hurting. And so I still worry about them because I'm like, they're falling through the cracks, and there are not enough social workers to do what needs to be done. There are not enough people who care. So it touches me often. So Dr. Bradley, it really looks like you're sitting in a classroom. Are you at work?
I am. This is my office, and so I have my whiteboard for do what I need to do.
So you don't see like students and people and all of that with social distancing and all of that going on, right?
No, see, I'm a director, so I work at the county education office. So our primary role is to support the districts. So in my role, I don't see the students. So thankfully, and then since I have office, I can put my mask on when I go out, and then I, can be free in my space when I'm here. Yeah, but I think that you brought up some great points about like the things that you need to do for parents to help each other. It can be tough, right? And Jacoby's points, everybody made great points about building this community right now. I think it's important to like, one, build a network of support. Two, research and understand what resources are available so that you could be able to share them with your network. And then three, ask questions, because if we don't talk to each other, we won't know what other people need. And I think that we have to remove this stigma of kind of privacy sometimes. And so the more we're able to share and tell and talk with each other, I think that way we can try to close the gap for each other. And Jacoby, you made a great point about, the teacher, the educator should not be that number one role model, but we're going to have to pick up the slack in the home in ways that we weren't used to. And I think that the more people that take on that mantle, the better we are to help people kind of like not fall through the cracks, like you mentioned.
This was great, guys. Thank you for joining me. I'm going to post the link to Elaine's YouTube channel for anyone who would like to check it out. She does a lot of really good readings with books. All of them have been like, African-American, which is why I love them. And 30 Mommy has been doing an amazing yoga with her kids where they're focusing on a book as well. So anyone out there who is looking for some book suggestions, definitely go to either one of their pages. All I can say once again is thank you. And to you parents out there who are trying to figure this out, you're not alone. And that's part of the reason why I wanted us to get on here and talk about this. We're all trying to figure it out. And if we form together as a community, I feel like we will be successful. If you need help, don't let pride get in the way. Reach out, ask someone for help. I don't have all the answers, but I will definitely help you find what I can. And don't forget, schedule those doctor's appointments, because now you can go into the hospitals. We want to make sure that we're building our immune system and protecting ourselves. Vaccinations, first line of defense. Check it out. But thanks for joining us, guys. I will see you all next week. You guys have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.